For those of you who don't know me, I'm Julie Raskin, the Executive Director of Congenital Hyperinsulinism International. I'm also the mother of Benjamin, who's 26 years old and was born with congenital hyperinsulinism. In our HI Stories series, we introduce you to people around the world who are living with congenital hyperinsulinism. And today we have a wonderful guest, Zoohra. Zoohra, would you like to introduce yourself with your full name?
Sure. So I'm Zoohra Mashriki. I am a mom to Omar, who is 3 years old and has hyperinsulinism.
Great. Well, it's so nice to meet you here for our interview. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you a little bit online through Facebook, and I just read the wonderful article on the CHOP website about Omar.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And yes, that was, we had so much fun speaking with Kathleen about that article. We had a really good time putting it together. So I'm excited that you got to read it and you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really did. It was really well done. And you have a delightful family. So here we have an opportunity to get to know you even more. So why don't you just tell me a little bit more about yourself and your husband and how you came to know about congenital hyperinsulinism and how it's affected your family and Omar.
Yes, absolutely. So I grew up in New York. My husband and I both grew up in New York. Our families are from Afghanistan. And we both grew up here, so we're New Yorkers pretty much. And yeah, I had never heard about HI even in med school. I don't think. I work as a primary care doctor. So Omar was born in 2019, and for the first year of his life, he didn't have any health issues. Immediately postpartum, really for the first year, no issues at all. It was only after he turned a year, when he started to drink cow's milk, that we started to notice some jerking motions with him. Nothing super overwhelming, but maybe about once a week he would have a jerking motion and then he would cry. So he seemed really upset by it.
Sure.
And we spoke to a neurologist just virtually at that time, because it was, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And we spoke to a neurologist virtually. They felt, this activity wasn't really concerning, and that we would just do a video EEG and, kind of monitor his symptoms. But at some point, while he was on the cow's milk, maybe for a couple of weeks at this point, he woke up one morning really just almost unresponsive. Like his eyes, were all over the place. He didn't have control of his eyes, and he was just very, very lethargic. So thinking about the jerking episodes, I was more concerned, that he was having a seizure. And we just got in the car and we drove him to the emergency room. And it was in the emergency room that we found out that his sugar was really, really low, it was 25. So we were thinking something neurological, and this ended up being an endocrine issue. So just during that hospitalization, which was in May of 2020, we found out that he had a low blood sugar condition, but we weren't really sure what was going on. Why is his sugar so low? All of his testing was coming back normal, which was great. And we had to basically give him cornstarch, which is it's a sugar that's difficult to digest, so it keeps the blood sugar normal for longer. And we had to give that to him, cornstarch mixed with like milk or water, so it tasted really bad. And every 3 hours, basically day and night. So it's very tedious, very difficult, a lot of sleep deprivation. And we did this for 3 months, and still his sugars were low. We kept having to increase the cornstarch, and his sugars were like in the 40s. So it just led me to, kind of be proactive about researching and finding doctors and getting second, third, and fourth opinions until we ended up at CHOP, basically. So after 3 months of not knowing what was going on, basically, we ended up at CHOP within 24 hours. We were directed by an endocrinologist in New York to seek care at CHOP because they're the, hypoglycemia like epicenter. And she reached out to them, and literally the next morning we were in Philadelphia. And by that evening, the first evening of his hospitalization, based on the testing that they were doing, they realized that he had hyperinsulinism. And out of all of the hypoglycemia diagnoses, like the low blood sugar diagnoses, HI, hyperinsulinism, tends to have a better prognosis in some ways. Like, there are there's medications to treat it. And also some kids outgrow it, depending on the reason. So yeah, we were kind of relieved that it was hyperinsulinism and there was a treatment for it. And he was started on the usual treatment for it, but he had a really, really life-threatening reaction to that treatment.
Which treatment was that?
So he got diazoxide, and it's not common, but he had a really severe low platelet count. So it was 4,000 and normal is like above 150,000. So he was just bleeding into his skin, little black and blue marks all over his face, which is how we found out that he was having that adverse reaction. So once and the diazoxide, he was doing really well with it. His sugars were stable with it. So we thought like we were going home and we have a medication and everything is great. But then before we were discharged, he developed the black and blue marks on his face. And then, that's when we were like, okay, well, he's got to get a G tube. He's got to get started on continuous dextrose because that's, the only way to keep him stable at this point.
Can you tell our viewers, those who don't know what it is, what a G tube is?
Yes, so a G tube, it's called a gastrostomy tube. It's a tube that's placed in the stomach, either like, through a tube in your mouth or through your skin. But it's used for various reasons, kids, or in general, patients that have issues with feeding, or, in Omar's case, he luckily doesn't have any eating issues, but he has a tube in his stomach that delivers dextrose or sugar fluids to him basically 24 hours a day.
Okay.
And
And
so
how, just a quick question. So how, if he's getting this dextrose through a tube into his tummy, how is that sugar connected to him? How does he?
So he has a little pump. So the tube is in his stomach, and then there's, other tubing that leads to a backpack that he wears, and there's a little pump in there.
Yeah. So he has a pump inside a backpack.
He has a pump inside a backpack that continuously delivers. It's like a certain ml per hour of fluid to him to keep his sugars stable.
Got it.
And he's adjusting really well. He's had it for 2 years at this point. He was already walking when he got it, so I can imagine that it's more difficult with babies that are crawling to have the backpack on. But he was already walking, luckily, and he's had it for most of his life at this point, so he does well with it. And he's very aware of it now. He, if he's sleeping upstairs, he just like picks up the backpack and he comes downstairs with it. If it does beep and like it has some alarm settings, but he'll like say, "Mommy, I'm beeping," and he does feel comfortable with it on. If he doesn't have it on, he's like, "Where's my backpack?" So he's gotten very used to it.
That's great. That's really great. And did he have any other medication that is used with hyperinsulinism besides diazoxide?
Yes. So the goal initially when we left the hospital was to transition him to an injection called lanreotide. The hope was it's a long-acting injection, so you get it once a month. And it was supposed to take a few months for it to kick in. And then the goal was to, stop the continuous dextrose once the lanreotide kicked in. But he didn't respond to it. His sugars were just not normal with him. So we just said, like, let's stop the lanreotide and we're just going to keep him on dextrose for now.
Sure. And just tell me about Omar. What kind of a kid is he?
He's really, really sweet. I think so many of the HI babies that I've seen are just super sweet. They have low sugar, but very sweet. He's just a very happy, always smiley, just really funny little boy. Yeah, absolutely.
Does he go to school?
He is starting pre-K in September. So he just turned 3, so he's going to pre-K for 3-year-olds. Yeah.
That's great. And how are the nights with the 24-hour dextrose? Do you you know, is he just used to having the tube connected to him while he sleeps?
He is. We got like a little IV pole from CHOP, and the fluids hang on the IV pole, and it's a long enough tube so that he's in bed and he doesn't really notice it, and he doesn't have any issues. I think the daytime is a little bit harder because he wants to be active. And then the tube does like stick out from the side of the book bag a little bit. So I'm always, worried about it getting caught or it coming out. And it has come out, it always comes out inevitably for every family, I think. And it's okay. It's not as bad as it seems. So definitely the daytimes are a little bit harder. But again, we've gotten so used to it. It really is just, a part of our everyday life at this point.
Sure. Yes. No. And full disclosure, when Ben, my son, was 2.5 years old, he got a G-tube.
Okay.
So I have a lot of personal experience with them too.
Was he on like continuous dextrose as well?
He had pancreatectomies.
Okay.
So he was on it at night. And
Okay.
then during the day, he'd have the dextrose break, and then he'd have injections of octreotide.
Okay.
Yes. And not, the multiple. It wasn't there,
Mhm.
there wasn't long acting octreotide, or it wasn't considered
Right,
an
the
option.
octreotide, right.
Way back then. Yeah.
And the octreotide it's actually an option for Omar as well. Like even if he goes to, like Chop mentioned, if he goes to pre-K, for example, just doing like an injection in the morning just to cover him for 8 hours. I think it's something we're going to discuss in his upcoming hospitalization in August. But I mean, he's so comfortable and happy with the G-tube. I almost don't want to give him an extra injection because he's getting the finger sticks and stuff. So we'll see. That might be something for him in the future.
Yeah.
And we're also waiting for some clinical trials at CHOP to see how he does.
Yes.
But the other part of this is at some point, I mean, most kids start to get better and be able to regulate. So we're hoping, in the next few years or in the future at some point that he just gets cured.
Of course. I certainly hope so. Yeah.
Me
So
too.
how, this is a complicated condition to take care of. And, for a young new mom to have a child with a chronic condition like this, it can be a lot.
Yeah.
How was it for you, especially being in the medical profession? I would think that in certain ways would prepare you a lot for something like this, but on the other hand, it might be tough. So how was it for you to adjust to having a child with a medical condition?
I mean, first was, just the shock aspect of it, because, again, for the first year of his life, we literally just thought he had no issues. So, after that one day that he was lethargic, all of a sudden we have potentially, a lifelong serious diagnosis that we're dealing with. So it's definitely a huge shock. And then, for example, the cornstarch just around the clock every 3 hours. I mean, it's, so just tedious. So it's definitely a lot, but I mean, we have like such a great support system with our families. Our families are very hands-on, they know about the G-tube, they know all about his treatments, they know everything about Omar, so they can help take care of him, give us a break. And, they're very supportive and have a positive attitude, which definitely rubs off, on me. And, I have a very good attitude about it, especially because, Omar is doing so well and he's thriving and he's healthy. So, there's no reason to, it seems kind of silly to be upset about it. But it was definitely very difficult in the beginning. And I wasn't sure, if I was even going to be able to go back to work giving him cornstarch every 3 hours.
Sure.
So I initially went back to work part-time. And now I'm working from home, I'm working virtually, so I have more time just with him and to be available in case something does happen. I'm in the house if something happens, if his G-tube comes out or his sugar is low or something like that. But so it, if it was challenging for me to like navigate the healthcare system, to find the right doctor, find the right hospital, I can't imagine how difficult it is, for parents that are not in the medical field.
Right.
No,
The
terminology and the equipment, I still get a little like I don't love having to change Omar's YouTube. I mean, we do it because we have to do it, but it's like, it's always a little bit weird. So I can't imagine, just not having that experience and, how hard that is.
Yeah. It's really incredible the way parents of every
Right.
background, they just step up
Right. Absolutely.
and they do it. And I'm always so amazed at
Yeah.
how quickly they learn all of the vocabulary, learn about all the equipment,
Yeah.
and take such careful care of their children. It's really amazing.
I know it is.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just wanted to mention, I think this is a good place to mention like the CHI, the Facebook group, because that was a huge, huge help. I mean, we message each other in that group before we like reach out to our doctor or at the same time as our doctor, because we know, the moms there have, so much experience or they've gone through similar things, and really nobody understands our situation better than the CHI Facebook group. So it's
Yes,
amazing.
no, it's really wonderful the way that the families all support each other on our website, on our Facebook group. Yeah, I agree. It's great. Yeah, one thing about Omar's case that just, is a little bit different than a lot of the others is that he wasn't diagnosed
Right.
earlier. And that, so I'm wondering about that. You said something, you said that after you switched from formula to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that the
Yes.
event that,
Yes.
yeah,
So it seems like Omar's formula was just giving him enough carbohydrates and to sustain him. And interestingly, he was waking up overnight, even as a 1-year-old, 11-month-old, prior to him getting sick. He was waking up overnight to drink like 3 bottles a night. And I just thought like he had a big appetite, like no real red flags were going off. I was like, okay, the kid loves his milk. I don't know.
yeah, so you
Um,
just went with it, you just went
I
with it.
just went with it. He was just getting milk overnight, like every 3 hours. At least like 2 to 3 bottles a night he was having.
Wow, so you
Um,
were protecting his brain, that is amazing. Yeah,
yeah, he would cry and I would give him milk. So it's just his body, I guess, doing it. But so once we switched him to cow's milk has a higher protein content and less carbs than the formula. So the high protein causes your body to release insulin. So he was having like acute hypoglycemic episodes when he was having those jerking movements, probably from the cow's milk. So
mhm,
there are certain kids with HI that are protein sensitive, which means they can't have protein alone. They have to mix it with carbohydrates or have the carbohydrates first, or else they'll have a drop in their sugar.
right,
So that's what happened with the cow's milk. There's just too much protein, not enough carbs.
yeah.
And there's other things too that, drop his sugar, like exercise, for example, running around, the heat, which, we found out yesterday. He just went to the park and he was running around and it was also really warm. So we checked his sugar and it was, a little bit low. So I have to gauge how much to increase his fluids when I take him out. But so yeah, exercise, extreme temperatures, also can drop his sugar.
Okay. Do you find that you have to sort of restrict certain activities, or do you just kind of learn and then compensate with
Yeah,
food?
I more so like to learn and compensate. I want him to do, the things that he wants to do, he wants to be able to do, because he does want to do everything. So I just figure out how to let him do those things. So we've been increasing his dextrose with exercising if he goes to play soccer or if it's cold outside or if it's too warm outside. So we just figure it out. I for swimming, for example, I used to like connect him and put like a waterproof backpack on him. But this year I kind of just disconnected him from his continuous dextrose and put a lollipop in his mouth, and it just gave him the dextrose he needed for like those 30 minutes, and he did fine with it. So
Wow.
we figure things out as we go
Yeah,
along.
yeah, yeah. So tell me about the endeavor that you have just begun.
Okay, so I'm so excited to share this. This actually came about because my mom was helping me fix a lot of Omar's clothing. So, we already had clothes for Omar at home, or like hand-me-downs from his older brother, or even new things that we were buying that just would not fit for a child with a G tube. And so my mom, she knows how to tailor clothes and she knows how to sew. So she would help me, fix up the clothes so that it would work for him. And it just made me realize that there are a lot of gaps with the things that are available to kids with G tubes. And I love to dress Omar up and dress him down, and for him to have nice PJs and nice clothes and just like a lot variety of clothing options and prints. So I wanted to make a clothing line. We actually named it after Omar. It's called OmiiBomii. It's his nickname, either Omi or OmiiBomii. It's his nickname. We wanted to make a clothing line that just was affordable, that was cute and fun, and that is easily available. So I plan on putting up some products soon on Amazon Prime. So there's going to be 2-day shipping. So if moms need clothing, it's available in 2 days as opposed to like a long wait time.
That's great. That's
I'm just
incredible.
hoping that it makes, other parents' lives easier and they just have, more choices and more availability. And then it's being sent over to Amazon. So I'm doing like it through Amazon FBA, basically.
That's great. I just love hearing about the creativity of people who are touched by this condition, and there's many times when it really interferes with work and one parent has to stay home, and it's very hard. It's very hard in terms of a family's socioeconomic standing and their ability to pay their bills. It can be so hard.
Right.
Sometimes families, people just come up with creative ideas. Sometimes with new ways to work, working at home, for instance, for you. That's just great that you were able to pivot and do that. But then to come up with something like a clothing line for kids who have G tubes, that's just really great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so impressed, and I got to see a few, and they're so really nice looking.
Thank you, Julie.
Yes.